Give me that. Give me that. Give me that.
Pow, and welcome back to another episode of Sumelevate. It's great to have another guest with us today, Chris King. Hey, man.
Nice to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
Great. As soon as I spoke with Chris on the phone, he had some really interesting things to say, so I knew I would love to have him on the podcast. Chris is a high-performance executive coach and motivational speaker. He works with professional women in organizations and teams, and as well as really helping people with their barriers and just being their authentic best selves. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, going great. I'm having a great day. I'm having a great life, and now I'm talking to some great people. So thank you for having me.
Great, awesome. So the first thing that I want to ask you, that I ask everybody, is how did you first get into this journey?
Oh my gosh, that's going to take the entire show. You know, my joke about this, there's some truth to it. You know, my career is sort of like a coffee shop at 2:30 in the morning. It's not really some place you intended on going. It's just where you ended up, right?
Right.
And only when I got there, I met the love of my life, right? You know, throughout the course of my life, I had to kind of rewrite my own operating system in my head to make adjustments. And I've gone from, you know, the top of the top to the bottom of the bottom kind of thing. And through all of that, I learned how to adjust and compensate and pivot. And I learned how to find my own answers, because while I could go out into the world and seek advice from anybody, giving myself my advice was the advice I was going to take and the thing that I was going to do. And so I learned how to figure things out, and that's kind of what I do now, is I help people find their way of figuring it out.
Right, there's no right answer, there's just your answer, right?
Right.
That's great. So, that's amazing. And so when did you get started, or how did you get started exactly in terms of this journey?
I got started because I got fired, is how that happened.
How's your typical?
Yeah. My background is in technology, broadcasting, and healthcare. And I was working at a tech company as the director of business development. And anytime the senior team would come to me and say, what are we going to do about this? What are we doing? What are we going to do about that? Yeah. Instead of just providing them answers, I would start coaching them through a process. Now, I got a background in spiritual psychology, and from working at a hospital, I got an accidental education in neuroscience. And so I just started taking them through a process of discovering what they needed to do for the organization. And one day, the company owner came to me and he said, you're in the wrong line of work. You should not be doing business development. You should be coaching people and business owners. And he said that if I was going to continue to live out of alignment with my purpose, that I wasn't going to do it there. So he basically fired me and said, go do what you're supposed to do.
Go chase your dreams, yeah.
And I've been doing it ever since.
It was a blessing then. Yeah, that's great. Best firing story I've heard. So that's great. In terms of what you learned in terms of just spirituality and neuroscience, what did you notice any overlap there? What was interesting about those two, and what really lit that fire for you in terms of just having both of those perspectives?
Yeah, you know, the neuroscience piece was an accident. I mean, you joke about that because I was working in a hospital, and I was doing marketing and PR specifically for the Neuroscience Institute. So I was working with the physicians on presentations and collateral material and you know, community events and all this kind of stuff. While I was there, I was doing my education in spiritual psychology. And the thing with that is that psychology, you know, the very clinical psychology that we look at today is, you know, we talk about the study of human behavior, but the original meaning of the word really had a soul integrated complex. Call it your authentic self, your soul, your eternal being, whatever you want to call it, right?
Right, from psyche,
and
right?
So, right, yeah. So the essential thing here is that, you know, I come from a background where it's like, look, I'm not a person that has or possesses a soul. I am a eternal soul having a human experience. And so in service to that, and honoring everybody else's process and experience and call it their spiritual curriculum, which I don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. But I don't have to give people any answers. That's not my job. My job is to figure out what is stopping them. Like if you call me and you say, Chris, I don't know what to do about this. I run that through my translator and it says, Chris, I don't have access to that information. And so my job is to figure out what is stopping you from accessing that information, because if I can get that out of the way, then I can support you through the process of doing what you know you need to do. And I can do that through the lens of neuroscience and psychology so that your mental framework aligns with your goals and your intended outcomes. So whatever the changes you want in your world, they're sustainable this way.
Great. That's really amazing. So what are some key kind of epiphanies that you've had throughout this journey? What are some things that really have shifted lanes for you, or just in terms of just your own, like, wow, I never thought of this before. This is cool.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that, and this seems to particularly run true with my female clients, is that everything about you is a gift, and you are uniquely designed to achieve whatever your goals are, whatever call it your mission, your purpose. If I were Paulo Coelho, I'd call it my personal legend, right? So you are designed as you are to achieve that. So that means everything about you is a gift. So anything that you judge as wrong or bad or a negative, you're actually losing power in doing that. If you can recognize, I'll give you an example from my own personal life, is that I was told as a kid that I talk too much. As you probably have already figured out, word economy is not my gift, right? So they said, you talk too much, you talk all the time. And I took that as a bad thing and I started to shut down. And the joke is that when I realized that my ability to talk for hours on end was a gift, I figured out how to put that in service. And I started doing motivational speaking. Right. And, the joke is that people used to tell me they would pay me to shut up. Now they pay me not to.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's really using it's almost like Batman, right? You're using your weakness of what you thought was a weakness is actually now your strength. And
right.
That's the kind of transformation by itself. I think it's amazing when I have a client and then I see that glow in their eyes, that they got that aha moment. What are some aha moments for you in terms of your clients and something that you've noticed? You don't have to release any confidential information, but just what are some amazing transformations that you've noticed in your clients?
Sometimes they come in really big ways and sometimes really small. And my favorite are the small ones because it's a complete pivot in framework. I was working with a vice president of a very large financial institution, and his thing was that he had, the way he framed is that I got these days where I'm crushing it. And I'm just motivated and cranking through. And then I have these days when I'm just sitting there staring at a blanking cursor and I can't get anything done. And I said, okay, well, what do you think this lull in motivation, as he called it, is costing you? And he said, oh my gosh, it's costing me this, it's costing me time and efficiency and productivity and energy and all this kind of stuff. It's like, this is really such a terrible thing in my professional world. And I said, let me ask you a question. How do you know? And right in that moment, he and he just thought, he said, that's a good question. Because I said, what if that the days that you're sitting there doing nothing are the reason that you can actually crush it on those days where you're cranking through? What if you're actually sharpening the axe as you sit there and sort of, hang out? And then the days when you start swinging, you are just cutting down trees left and right. And he was and it changed his world. Because it's what we say in my work is how you relate to the issue is the issue. And there's an opportunity to shift how he's relating to that and realign it with his outcome.
Right. You can't fix a problem with the same level of thing it takes to solve it, right? So, yeah, I definitely see that. That perspective shift is very interesting in terms of how he just like, whoa, yeah, like I've also thought about it similarly when if you think about something like approach anxiety, if you reframe it as approach preparedness, like that's like a game changer. And just doing that with a lot of things and reframing different things is an incredible tool in terms of just getting someone to see maybe not your perspective, but just a different perspective, and then just taking that on, being like, wow. So that's a great aha moment that you shared with us. It's great.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The look on his face in that moment was very deer in the headlights.
Right. Yeah. So, as a high performance coach, what would you say that your definition for a leader is?
A definition of a leader. Leaders create leaders.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Leaders know how to.
Have you ever heard of that show?
What's that?
There's a show on YouTube called Leaders Create Leaders, I believe. It's awesome. Anybody listening should check it out. Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Well, I think really good leaders know how to identify and employ the natural talents, skills, abilities, genuine interest of their subordinates, of their staff, to align it with the mission of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody, if I'm working for an organization and they see, man, this guy has the gift of gab, or this guy really sees things at the conceptual level, he's a very conceptual thinker. Yeah. We need to put him in a more abstract kind of role, because that's where he's really going to, hit his stride. So let's get him out of the blocking and tackling thing. Let's get him in a think tank. Let's get him in the creative side or something like that. Gay Hendricks wrote a book called The Big Leap, and he talks about your three zones. At the bottom is your zone of competence, in the middle is your zone of excellence, and at the top is your zone of genius. And if you're sitting around in your zone of competence, like for me it might be like bookkeeping or something, I'm going to drag really bad down here. I don't love it. I'm smart enough to do it, but I don't like it. It's not fun. It's energetically expensive. So put me up in my zone of excellence or in my zone of brilliance, because that's where I'm going to really make an impact for the organization. And a good leader is going to be able to figure out who is this person and how do we really, based on their value system and based on kind of who they are, how do we get them to channel all of who they are and what they are into what we're trying to do and connect them with the mission. That's
really great. Yeah, I definitely feel that too. And yeah, you can't, I think Einstein said you can't judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, right? If you put someone in a position where they're not using their strengths, they're not really going to flourish. And yeah, I think in their genius zone or their brilliance zone, they're just naturally doing it. And there's a definite power in there. So this is a question that I ask a bunch of people on this podcast, and it's an interesting one. But if you had to time travel and give your younger self like a message, what would it be?
Wow. Travel back in time. Well, how old, I guess,
Right. I think, let's say let's say young teens.
Young teens.
Yeah.
All right. I think as a young teenager, I think back then it would be about a message of accountability. Okay. Look, you have a choice, man. You can make whatever choice you want, and it's just a question of what is it you want to align with. If you're really going to be a good steward of your purpose, your mission, right, and recognize that, even as a solopreneur, I don't work for me. I work for the mission. I work for the organization. And it is my opportunity and maybe even obligation to align myself with the thoughts and the feelings and everything that support success. If you're going to really crush it and you're going to achieve your goals and your dreams, you don't have the luxury of telling yourself you don't deserve it. That's for other people. You don't have the luxury of telling yourself you're not good enough, because that does not support the mission. It's bigger than you. And my little ego construct that thought I was a waste and thought I was bad and all this kind of stuff, it's like, look, you're too powerful. You don't have the luxury to think crappy things about yourself. You got stuff to do.
That's a real kick in the pants for your younger self, man. I like it. So
Right. Well, either that or we just tell them, dude, grow the F up already. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Right, exactly. That's great. That's fantastic. So the question now is, you mentioned purpose. This is the term that constantly gets thrown around in the personal development field, if you want to call it that.
Right.
So what exactly defines somebody's purpose? Can people have more than one purpose? And how does someone differentiate with, oh, this is my purpose, and, oh, this is not really my purpose? Is it a question of feeling? What is the compass?
I think that's a great word, the compass there, because really aligning yourself with your own magnetic north. And I think it's the divining rod to find it is, where do you have heat? Like, where's the energy? Where's, and release any judgment about it, because it may not be about the thing that you're looking at or that you see. It's about what it represents to you, right? So maybe you just love something so much, like that is my purpose. Maybe it's on the other side. Maybe you are so upset about something, there's some grave injustice that is so deeply rooted for you that wrong must be righted, So look within yourself, within your world, and notice, where do you relate to things with a lot of juice, a lot of energy, a lot of heat, whatever it is. Say, this clearly means something to me. Let's explore that. No judgment, no shame, no nothing, just, that's interesting. Let's learn more about that.
That's great. It's fascinating. So what are some techniques that you use to boost your own energy, or if you feel yourself kind of lacking, or you're just like, you wake up one morning and you're just like, meh, I don't want to do it. What are some ways that you kind of kickstart things and just get yourself honed in and just doing what you need to do and showing up?
Showing up, that's the first thing. I recommend to everybody, if you don't have a meditation practice, you need to start one, because, you give me 4 minutes, and I'm serious about it. You give me 4 minutes of your morning for 1 month, I will change your life. I mean, it's that simple. So meditation is the first thing, which I would recommend for anybody. For me personally, when I get stuck in the mud, it is crucial that I start creating something. I have got to build. I am very bored with built. In a former life, I was a radio DJ. I spent 12 years on the air, and I built a morning show. I loved building the show and doing it as I was building it. Once the show was built, I got very bored very quickly. And so for me, I have to create. So right now I'm in the process of creating something that I'm not getting any money for. I saw an opportunity and went, there's an opportunity here. I'm going to build out this program. It's for somebody else and somebody else's business that they did not ask me to do, that they may never use or anything. But you know what? I'm going to build it because I think it's cool. And I'm going to offer it and say, here's this thing for you. I'm happy to help you execute it if you want to. Otherwise, I'm just going to go do other stuff. So for me, create and build, create, build. That's me.
Great. And in terms of creation, this is a very interesting topic to me. It's been something I've been exploring for a long time. And a lot of the stuff in research that I've gotten into in terms of positive psychology has been the topic of flow. And so what are some moments that just get you completely in the zone and just honed in terms of when you execute, and you are a high performance coach, so what gets somebody on that peak performance and what gets you on there?
That's a great question, because I'm a flow junkie as well. One of my partners was actually mentored by Abraham Maslow, so he's a positive psychology guy.
Man.
Yeah. And before that, he worked for Viktor Frankl, so he was, he's got quite the pedigree. But for me, it really is what I call the moment of commitment. When I was a kid, we used to ride BMX bikes all the time, and we would create these ridiculous jumps. And there was a moment of commitment where you hit the top of that ramp and you have a choice, in or out. There's no gradient scale. There's no 99% commitment. There's either commitment or not commitment. And in that kind of time frame, in a nanosecond, we had to make that choice. If we made the choice, embraced the fear, and channeled it into energy, we'd land that jump every time. If there was one speck of hesitation, there was guaranteed crash. And so it is, for me, if I can take my clients up to that edge where it's scary as F, and I can get them to embrace that fear that normally stops people is so powerful to paralyze you. It's just as powerful to push you if you know how to flip the polarity and push it in the right direction. Instead of holding you back and blowing against you, it becomes wind in your sails.
That's awesome. So you're saying it's kind of like, instead of the red traffic light, you're turning it into a green, and it's like go more into the fear and allow it to embrace it in order to find out how you can use it for your energetic fuel. So
lean into it. Like instead of pushing it, no, that's scary, I don't want that. Bring it in, lean into that. Say, whoa, breathe it in. It becomes incredibly powerful.
That's awesome. So, just some key things, resources, let's say, that have helped you to really change the phase of your career. So, let's say, what are some books, or if you listen to audiobooks, I'm not sure, what are some books that are playing for you right now, and what are some books that have helped you in terms of just changing the phase of your career?
Thank you. There are a lot of books that I consider required reading to be a human being, and most of those also fall into this is required to be a leader or an entrepreneur. Yeah. I would say Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I would say Creativity Inc. about DreamWorks. I would say Rise of Superman. I would say Mindset, right? You know that one, right? Flow is a good one. Dr. Chick Set Me High, but it was kind of dry, so I actually like Rise of Superman a little better.
Yeah, it's much more like, the energy is much more there, with Steven Kotler, that's for sure.
Mindset by Carol Dweck, Eat That Frog. I mean, this is a very long list. And then if you're into kind of the fiction stuff, The Alchemist, right? Paulo Coelho, things like that. Don Miguel Ruiz, right? Just very simple things like the Four Agreements, right? It's incredible how much energy you can reclaim, by paying attention to some basic things like take nothing personally, right? So long list there, sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. Definitely some value there. I love all of those books that you mentioned, so that's great. So in terms of somebody who wants to put their coaching practice out there and is working on, like, as a solopreneur yourself, I know you resonate with, is just putting content out there, right? And just being able to get that exposure, get that visibility. And I mean, that comes with different skills, depends on what you're doing. Some people prefer copywriting, some people prefer videos. What is your preferred method of just generating clients, or just like being able to create that content and share it out there? And what are some people who are just starting out in this mad, crazy industry? What can they do? What are some things that you would recommend coaches starting out?
What I would recommend to coaches starting out, don't do it. No. It's, the reality is that most of the people that work in this kind of space, especially if the words like transformational, whatever, like, they're great at what they do. Yeah. That doesn't make them good business people. True. I work with a lot of professional service providers, lawyers. They're great lawyers. They're terrible business people, right? Yeah. So you got to start thinking of this in terms of a business, right? Now, a business is a system with processes and staple things that have to be done. So you can't just be loosey-goosey about this. You got to create the processes. You got to create the systems. You got to figure out, what do you do? Who do you do it for? What is the benefit, and what is your brand that's gonna resonate with all of that? most people don't even understand what a brand is. Let me tell you what a brand is not, just really quickly. It is not a logo, a tagline, and a color scheme. That's not a brand, okay? A brand is it's everything that people can hang their hat on. Like if I look at, and I'll be very polarizing here, Donald Trump. Donald Trump isn't a person, it's a brand. Howard Stern was the same way. Disney, it's a brand. Great brands polarize. And you got to understand that you cannot be everything to everybody, and you cannot have everyone like you. You have got to be able to polarize and set yourself apart so your audience knows who the hell you are and what you can do for them. So create those systems, create those processes. If you're not a good branding or marketing person, get one, because you will need this to succeed.
Absolutely. And in terms of just generating content, things like that yourself, what are some ways in which you can get started on that as a coach?
I think it's what resonates for you. People are going to tell you, you got to do a podcast, you got to do blogs, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's like, really? Do you? Let's answer that question by, where is my audience? Who are they? What do I do for? Where are those people? Like, I want to be able to meet them where they are. So the other thing too is, like, for me, I want to maximize resources. When I got started, I was like, I need to do video content, but I didn't. I had problems with time and schedules like everybody else. So I was like, well, what can I do? I started shooting them in my car while I was driving between clients, not because it was but because that's where I had a time inventory. And it became like a thing, like, this whole mobile motivation thing I started doing. And so it's maximizing your resources and making sure that, again, it is in concert with the brand. It supports the brand. It's aligned with the brand. Never violate your brand.
That's really great. Never violate your brand. I like that. And what separates...
The second you do, you lose your credibility.
Yeah, what separates just an average brand to, like, just a phenomenal brand, in your opinion?
Well, I think what I said earlier in terms of a really great brand is going to polarize.
Polarize, yeah.
It's going to say, here's everybody, and then here's the other, and you want to be the other. You want your audience to see you as clearly not that, but this, and identify with that. So you have to be willing to be unpopular. You have to be willing to be disliked. I don't want my non-audience to like me. I don't care. That's not who I'm looking for. And it's okay that they don't like me, because they're probably talking about me. So great. And when it comes to that, it all boils down to authenticity, right? Yeah. And this is where it circles back, is that because if I can get up and talk about high performance, this, that, and the other, but if I'm not coming from an authentic place with an authentic energy, then it's not going to work. I used to go to networking events in a shirt and tie and a jacket and whatever, or a suit or something, and I didn't get any business. And one day I showed up with t-shirts, jeans, sneakers, and a sport coat, and I dropped an F-bomb in the middle of the meeting, and 3 people called me after that meeting and said, I really want to talk to you. And so that authenticity speaks, because especially the younger generations now, they don't want to be sold to. I don't want to be fucking sold to, It just... Nobody wants to be sold to. They want to be connected with, and you can only do that by showing up authentically.
Great. And what are some ways in terms of starting out? Like, I know when I started out, I completely went into this fake it till you make it approach, and that crashed and burned. And so I kind of reframed it and figured out, okay, it's not fake it till you make it. It's recognize it until it becomes real. Right? So it's like knowing that, like, you are that confident person, knowing that you are that happy person already, and that is your default, and it's more about the unlayering process. So that was a big kind of moment for me. Was there something similar that you came across in terms of just not playing a persona and getting super authentic and really merging all those fragmented identities and things like that together to be able to come from a place of power?
Yeah, I think my the moment that is most present for me is I was sitting across a desk from a guy at a large international wealth management organization, and he was making more money by the minute than I was going to make that week. I was basically living out of my car and living on friends' couches, and broke as can be. And I'm from the northwest side of Santa Monica. I'm not comfortable being broke, but there I was, and with no roof over my head other than the ones that people would provide for me, and there I was talking to this guy who just reeked of money, how I was going to help him with his business, and I was going to actually be able to make him more effective and more efficient. And there was a part of me in my head going, "You are such an imposter. This is ridiculous." But then there was that other part of me that said, "You know how to do this. You know you're good at this. And this is not about the pedigree or anything. There's a knowing. Am I good at this? Hell yeah, I'm good at this. Can I do this work? I do this work better than just about anybody." I mean, and so, yeah, I bought into that. And that's how I was able to make the shift. And it was trust. It was that trust in myself. Maybe he was going to trust me, maybe he wasn't, maybe this was going to take me in a whole different direction, but I was trusting in the process and believing in myself.
Definitely. And I really liked how you differentiated between the two voices, because that happens a lot to people. It's like they have these two voices going on in their heads. And yeah, the way that you chose the more powerful voice, the one that's actually going to guide you towards bettering yourself and actually improving, like that's so key. So thank you for sharing that story.
Well, you're welcome. It boils down to accountability, right? If I'm going to be in service to that mission, that purpose, I have the responsibility to choose the belief system that aligns with the success of it. And that's an accountability thing. It's a choice.
Awesome. So, how did you figure out that your target audience were women in the organization and just executive sectors, and how do you connect with an audience of people when you're speaking?
The two answers to that. The first being, as far as my clients do tend to be female and women-run organizations and teams. And that was a total accident. Yeah. Because I wasn't marketing that way. It's just started showing up. One day I realized that my client base was about 70% female, and so that's when I started marketing that way. And then the really weird thing happened was that as soon as I started marketing towards women, I got a whole slew of guys that showed up.
Right. Once
I was like,
you
I
stop
don't know what I'm
doing
doing clearly, right? So I'm going with it.
Yeah.
But as far as connecting with an audience, now that's a different thing entirely. There's I don't know that I have a good answer to that question. There's an energy that's present, and I guess I would say be very present in the moment, highly attuned to yourself, to your audience, to the energy that's happening. I don't know that I have a good answer for here's how to do that in terms of blocking and tackling. I would say, meditate and get used to being hyper aware of what's happening and pay some real close attention. I know people that can't even attune to their husbands or wives, let alone anybody else. So it is about that. That's the operative word for me, is attunement, and that comes through paying attention.
Yeah. How can people pay attention in terms of just this onslaught of just information overload that we have constantly? What are some ways in which you deal with that sense of there's so much out there, and what can I absorb right now which will help me? And in a way, I want to ask you, like, what are some ways that you unplug and really get connected? I know meditation is something that you mentioned, but really in terms of, let's say you're getting overwhelmed because there's so much out there and a lot of millennials that I've noticed is definitely go through this process of like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. Like I could be watching a YouTube video in one tab and have Facebook open, and then I have a text here, and then, so what are some ways in which you really get that sense of focus?
Well, it's your hobbies and your recreational activities are going to be crucial. One of the things that I tell the executives and the teams that I work with is if you're not willing to create space in your life for your hobbies and your recreational activities, we're not going to work together, because that's going to affect a certain part of your brain. I need access to a part of your brain that I'm not going to get access to if you are not doing these kinds of things. I need clients to be able to get offline and do the things that they love and enjoy, and get more life in and out of their lives, right? Dr. Robert Holden spoke at a graduation ceremony that I was at, and he said, if it seems like something is missing from your life, it's probably you. And I thought that was brilliant. And if we can get people more connected to the things that they love. For me, it's mountain biking. You're going to see me on my mountain bike at 7 a.m. pretty much every Saturday morning. I'm out on a hill somewhere crashing into something, and it's awesome, because I know that fulfills me. You know, that lights me up. It lifts me up. It's the reason that I go into Monday morning into work the way most people go into Friday night to party. I'm so charged up. I'm so happy. I'm so excited. And if you're missing that, then there's probably things in your life that you need to be doing. So get focused, get present, do those things that you love, because you're going to be more likely to be focused and present with them. Exactly. And that will train you to be focused and present.
That's a great point. Yeah, actually doing what you love and enjoying the process is so key in terms of the flow state that we were talking about earlier too. That's super key. So my next question is definitely going to be one of bridging the gap between you, the person you are, and your higher self. So what are some ways in which you bridge that gap for yourself, and what are some ways that you help clients to do that?
I am really glad you asked that question, because there's a great answer for it. The only thing, one thing, that is separating you from the person you want to be, and that thing is simply your bullshit story that you're not that person.
Right.
That's it. When you recognize
mic drop.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
You know who and what that is, and you live into that knowing and that vision. That's it.
Yeah, and also like recognizing the past programming and the stories that you have, and really being able to call bullshit on them, and being able to just be super aware of, like, hey, I've already, in the metaphysical realm at least, just knowing it's already there. And
right.
That's a great factor of it. Have you gone into any...
I heard a great question once that just said, what is the story that you're telling about yourself, and who would you be without that story?
Right. That's great. You give us a lot to ponder, I bet, Chris. For the people listening, they're
that's my job. Stir up your brain chemistry a little.
Right. That's great. So I just want to get right now into what are some ways in which you were talking about accountability earlier. And I think that's so key for just mentors in general to hold their clients accountable and really wanting to see them win. And I think in terms of somebody who is working alongside you, what are some ways which inspire you to keep them accountable? Is it a level of commitment? Is it a level of just a good rapport with them? What is the top thing that really gets you to be that mentor for somebody?
Well, I think you have to live the message, right? I mean, if you're not living the message, then you're not a very good messenger. So it's being able to say, hey, man, I really shit the bed on that one, and here's how I'm going to make it right. So many times we get caught up in the shame and the judgment of mistakes that we make that we don't want to admit that we made the mistake or something. It's like, if we can let go of the shame and the judgment, we can own it. Be like, oh man, I totally screwed up. All right, here's what we need to do. and again, when we talk about accountability, I'm talking about extreme accountability. This goes well beyond just showing up on time or something like that, or doing what you said you're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm saying being accountable to the mission, being accountable to what you're trying to achieve, to who you really are. This is not easy because it requires a level of behavior that is a higher level, you know. But when we realize that we are in service to something bigger than ourselves in this mission, we are accountable to it, whatever that is. Like kind of earlier when I mentioned that you have a responsibility to be a good steward of that mission, and to be accountable to it means you don't get to tell yourself crappy stories about yourself, because that doesn't support what you're trying to do. So just own it, fix it, move forward. In my world, we work in a very binary place, working or not working, right? Effective or ineffective. Ineffective, great, let's make changes. No shame, no judgment, no bad, you did this and she did that. We don't got time for that. We got shit to do.
That's great. In terms of some of the millennials watching, I bet they're interested in wanting to know, since you are a motivational speaker, what are some ways to break out of procrastination and just in general, like a sense of laziness, which I don't think really is, it's just a lack of motivation. So what are some ways in which people can get motivated and stop that procrastination dead in its tracks?
Great question. Here's the dirty little secret about motivation that I will share with you, as from my framework as a motivational speaker. Yeah. Motivation is bullshit. Because if I'm sitting around on my ass doing absolutely nothing, I'm well motivated to do just that. So it's not a question of being motivated or not. It's a question of direction. Where are you channeling this? People don't need motivation. They need focus. They need commitment. They need accountability. They need connected purpose. If you have connected purpose and accountability and focus and discipline, motivation is the result, not the goal. You connect somebody to something in an authentic way, they will be motivated.
That's great. It's not the goal, it's the journey, and the result.
Yeah, that's true for most things, my friend. Yeah. Whatever your goal is, ain't the goal. It's the result. If you have an organization with employee retention problems, that's not the problem. That's the result of the problem. If you have a goal of growing your business 20%, that's not the goal, that's the result. The question then becomes, of what? That is the goal.
That's great. I've also thought about this idea of not wanting a goal, but really coming from the goal, like looking from the goal's perspective. And that's something that I've been trying to think about recently in terms of, I don't know where I first heard it from, but yeah, just that idea of goals don't have to be this super serious thing with a lot of gravitas. It's really just you figuring out what is the right goal for you. And yeah, you mentioned the sense of integration, and I think, what was the word that you used? Was it connection? Connected purpose? So having that sense of
authentically connected purpose to where you are invested in that, because it means something. When it means something to you, that makes all the difference.
That's great. So, all right.
Have people in here all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Good. All right, we're set. Little disruption there.
All right, no worries. So yeah, my final question for you, and that was a great, I think, way to just segue from motivation onto a topic of discipline. And what are some ways in which people can stay disciplined, not just for a short term, in a short burst moment, but really that long-term sense of discipline and having that sense of consistency?
Another great question. I think there are a few things that you can do. Is number one, really live into the vision of what you're trying to achieve. You keep that focus in sight all the time. That's going to be really helpful. The other thing, number two, would be training.
Yeah.
Meditation is great at this too, right? I'm going to meditate every day from 7 in the morning to 7:04, whatever your thing is, right? Because what you're doing is you're practicing that discipline and training yourself to be disciplined.
Yeah.
The other thing is accountability and recognizing that this is a choice. And if what you are trying to accomplish is truly a goal, you will do what is required to make it happen. If you're not willing to do what's required to make it happen, it's not a goal, it's a preference. And that's fine, but let's be clear about that. Because if it's just a preference, then don't waste your time trying to do things that you don't really want to do.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to have you on, Chris. This was amazing. This was eye-opening for me, and I'm sure the listeners. How can people get in touch with you? How can people get in contact with you?
Oh, my honor to come on. Thank you so much for the time and your attention, and your brilliant questions. You can catch me online, chrismking.com. M is in motivation. You can get me on Instagram at chrismikeking, and you can always just email, call. My contact information is on the website, chrismking.com.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much for being here, and it was a pleasure having you on. And have an amazing rest of the day. We'll catch up some other time.
I'll make it so. Thank you.
All right. Peace out, brother. Take care.